I want to prove a point with this video, an obvious point that I think a lot of people already know exists, but somehow still fails at sinking in when many people criticize a game or get angry about their feedback not being heard. The devs don't listen is a phrase you see fairly often in the gacha gaming sphere. Now, I'm not in touch with the Chinese or Japanese audience to know if they propagate the same sentiment, but I do know that in the Western gacha gaming space, this sentiment is shared a lot towards certain games. So, do the devs listen? Yes, the devs do listen. They just aren't listening to you. If that sounds harsh, nobody ever said the truth cared about your feelings. Let me pivot for a moment to the recent Genshin Impact livestream for Not Cry, where a dev made a ridiculous statement about Genshin not wanting to make money, as if this was a real question posed by a real portion of the player base. Well, I actually do think this was real sentiment felt by a real section of the Genshin player base, as crazy as that sounds. You then have to ask, who would ask such a question? Well, the whales, of course, specifically whales in the regions that give them the most money, China and Japan. It all makes sense when you realize this sort of statement was posed by the whales of Genshin. They've been seeking rewards for all the time and money they have sunk into 5 years of dedicated playtime, and they're all being rewarded in a way that's unrealistic for most players who haven't dumped enormous amounts of finances into the game. Coupled with the fact that these rewards are taking effect retroactively, which is also an attempt to reclaim whales who have since quit the game, hoping they'll return to collect their super rare items and make them feel special again. If it's not clear to you that the Genshin devs, and as a matter of fact, all gacha developers, listen only to their whales, then I don't know what else to tell you, because there's numerous examples to pick and choose from, some of you having witnessed firsthand. Remember the immediate Nouvellette rollback in Genshin? That was the CN players being livid. They rolled that shit back fast and gave us all a free 10 pull to quell the outrage. The HSR power creep complaints have been happening constantly over the years. Power creep doesn't matter to whales, so why even address it? The lackluster Wuthering Waves anniversary, when Kuro were supposed to be the chosen ones that were going to ruin first anniversaries and put everyone else to shame? You think Kuro whales are going to stop blowing tons of cash on the game because a bunch of free-to-play players are miffed about not getting enough free shit? The reality is, the Western audience and the rest of the world who aren't China or Japan, well, these devs just don't care about your opinion. You might feel like they do, and it seems coincidental when they add something you've been asking for, but most Western and global players usually ask for things that are the antithesis of the gacha model of business. They keep asking for more free shit, and to make the game feel more balanced and fair towards everyone. But the entire gacha game genre is about being unfair. Those who pay more get an advantage. So when Western players keep asking for things to be fair, it quite literally makes no sense. It sucks to realize and accept it, but it's not false. You'll save yourself a lot of frustration by just accepting that you're the third market for these types of games. And unless the West starts spending more than China or Japan, newsflash, they won't, then I really don't see this changing anytime soon. Now here's the kicker, and why this ties into the main title of this video. The consequences of what I just presented have tangible effects on the Western and global communities of these games. Because the Western market is ignored with regards to feedback, the player base builds up resentment. They feel their input is just being thrown into the trash bin. It expectedly fuels resentment, which is bottled up in the collective player base. And all that built up resentment has to go somewhere. Where does it go? Gacha drama videos and the subsequent rise of the gacha drama content creator and the viewers who watch them. The West loves being entertained, and drama turns that resentment into entertainment. But once you realize the reason this drama existed in the first place, instead of feeling vindicated by watching these videos, it now just seems like an exercise in futility. We, and when I say we, I mean the West, we'll all never get together and stop playing a game because we somehow collectively agree on something all of a sudden. That's just not how things are done in the Western world. Everyone is master of their own domain over here. We're almost expected to bicker and debate amongst ourselves because that's what freedom truly is, right? Or so we tell ourselves as much. Of course, we don't all disagree, but the West has a very difficult time breaking free from whatever tribal category said group identifies with. Personally, if that matters to you, I only play Genshin now because I've been disillusioned by gacha games. The FOMO, the dailies, the monetization, I think all of that hinders many aspects of what could make a game truly push the boundaries. Then again, gacha games see more frequent updates compared to most live service games, because of all the money that they rake in. So the nature of this genre will forever be a double-edged sword in my opinion. And as far as Genshin is concerned, we know a lot of the discourse over the past year has been negative sentiment towards the game, specifically with regards to many aspects of the Natlan region. But I'd argue that on top of the normal negativity that Genshin receives annually, there is one big reason for Natlan's backlash seemingly being more intense this time around compared to other regions. That reason being competition and the need for content creators of said competition to spread a narrative. Now, I know people don't like this argument because it pulls them out of their comfort zone, having to question their favorite content creator of their favorite game. But looking at things from an outside perspective, it only makes sense that a competitor game would want to capitalize on whatever narrative makes them look good in comparison. Yet the modern day gacha wars are not much different from the console wars from decades ago, where Sony and Xbox fanboys were at each other's throats for no good reason, fighting over which billion-dollar company was more polite in how they siphon cash from their customers. As a matter of fact, gacha companies most likely want you to fight amongst yourselves and bicker and moan about which game you think is better. Why would they want that? It creates a ton of social media engagement. It's literally free advertisement for them when you go online and scream and rage about how much you hate Genshin or Hoyoverse, Wuthering Waves, or whatever other game that disgusts you with a burning passion. You're doing free work for these gacha companies by letting people know that these games exist and that people still care about them. And just because you write something negative about a game you don't like, that doesn't mean that everyone is going to agree with your opinion and share your hatred of said product. That's not how it works, especially in the West. But you sure as hell advertise that game when you make a huge rant about it on social media to let the masses know. And when your post gets a bunch of likes, you only confirm that game's relevancy in the process. Games that are dead, dying, or are going to die don't get discussed, period. They slowly fade into irrelevancy because nobody cares about them anymore, which is ultimately why gacha drama videos, and to a similar extent, gacha drama content creators, are a contradiction in their existence. They fight and bicker amongst themselves, trying to prove that each other's favorite games are dying, irrelevant, or are somehow less greedy than their favorite gacha game that they play. Meanwhile, they're continuing to shine an unintended spotlight on the game that they hate, which is obviously still relevant. Otherwise, it wouldn't create so much viewer retention and repeated discourse while collecting easy ad revenue by triggering people to click after the thumbnail and title stirs up an emotional response. As much as the West and global don't want to accept it, the truth is, these games are just made for a different demographic. We should keep this fact at the forefront of our mind at all times, before and after we give an opinion, lest we create unnecessary frustration for ourselves. And as unfortunate or hopeless as the points I made might sound, ultimately, you just have to take whatever enjoyment you can out of these games. I still play Genshin Impact because there are aspects of the game that aren't directly tied to the gacha that I still enjoy. I can only suggest that you look past the gacha aspects and just enjoy the game if you can, and if you don't, then just move on with your life and find something else you enjoy doing. Video games are a hobby at the end of the day, not something to take overly serious. If you choose to keep playing gacha games, just remember that whenever these games make choices that frustrate you, they're probably doing it on purpose in order to keep the FOMO alive, or you're just not the target audience, and someone who spends 10 times more money than you is. And if you still watch gacha drama and actively hate players of a certain game, maybe one day you'll realize the futility of it all and move on to more fulfilling things to engage with. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide what you think is worth doing with your time. Because time is the most precious resource we have. And as many wise people have said before, don't squander the time you have been given. Life is short, so have a good day and make the most of it.